Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indo Sport podcast. Will Slattery here, and we are chatting rugby today. In your feeds at the moment is a chat I did with Sam Monaghan earlier, the Ireland co-captain from their recent World Cup campaign. We reflect on the disappointing defeat to France that came down to such fine margins, the controversy over the Aoife Wafer biting incident, and where the women's game can go in the short to medium term ahead of that game in the Aviva Stadium in next year's Six Nations. But now we're going to be focusing on the men's game. Ruaidhri O'Connor is here with me in studio. Ruaidhri, how are you?
Good, thanks, Will.
I'm doing very well. The season's about to kick off. But first, our rugby coverage is brought to you by Energia. Energia sponsors rugby in Ireland at all levels, at grassroots with the Energia AIL, and as official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. The Energia Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion, welcoming everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. To learn more about Energia's rugby partnerships and find out about their exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Rud, the URC kickoff is upon us. You said to me earlier, everything's been too positive. People are being too positive about the Irish teams. And I said, okay, Rud.
I listened to the left wing preview. I just thought there's a lot of it's the URC fever.
Have we been drinking Kool-Aid? We're not usually a Kool-Aid drinkers.
It's that time of the year. No one's kicked the ball. Everyone's had good pre-seasons. Everyone's feeling good. By the end of the weekend, at least one or two teams will have had a bit of a kick in the teeth and will be back to reality. But I think everyone's entitled to be a bit excited at this stage of the year.
Yeah, like I know you, Joe, and Ian Madigan kind of covered Leinster and Munster in good depth last week, so we don't need to kind of dwell on those teams. And Leinster are in action tomorrow. That team has been named. We might touch a bit on that in a few minutes. But throw your cold water then over everything. Like, what are the reasons to be kind of not cheerful then? If we were giving cheer in other instances, I
think everyone's got huge challenges. Like Leinster's, the expectation level remains the same, and it's what they're at. What we expect of them is very difficult, and we know that there are many pitfalls along the way to what they want to achieve in Bilbao at the end of the season. So they've got to integrate Rico Ioane. They've got this massive contingent of Lions who won't play for a good chunk of the season. They start in South Africa, which in one way is good because the South African teams don't have their box, but another way they're going down there with a good squad, but they're missing a lot of bodies. So they've got they're my favourites to win the league. They're joint favourites in the bookies to win Europe, and it's there for them again because it's all, with the squad they have, it's always possible. But we know that them being favourites doesn't necessarily translate into it. So Leo Cullen and Jack Nienaber, to my mind, are under a lot of pressure to deliver this year and to win the double. And I know Jack Nienaber said during the week, we've no divine right to win trophies. Like, it's not about having a divine right. It's about meeting your expectations every once in a while and putting yourself in the position, but also winning and getting over the line. Munster, Clayton McMillan comes in with a big reputation as a big presence, as a cultural architect who has a very good record with the Chiefs in terms of getting them to finals and having consistent seasons. But I think maybe that the departure of Peter Manny in particular is being underplayed. And when I look at Munster, Ulster and Connacht, who are going to go into a bit more depth, I don't know if the squad strength and the squad depth is there for them to really hit the highs that their fans expect. And they all have challenges in certain areas, and they have to keep bodies on the pitch. They're dealing with smaller budgets, probably playing more. In the case of say Ulster, they're playing a lot more young players. Richie Murphy's under a lot of pressure. The two new coaches, there's huge promise with Lancaster and McMillan, but there's also huge challenges for them to overcome. So, look, I'm not here to rain on anyone's parade, but I think a little bit of realism needs to be there in terms of what these teams can achieve, because post-Lions, when Ireland were the bulk contributors to the Lions, traditionally the bulk contributors to a Lions tour, they don't do so well the following season and internationally, and that obviously drips down into the provincial realm as well. And Europe's going to be even harder to win this year. I think there's more contenders to win the Champions Cup. URC, I still see it as Leinster versus the field. To meet expectations, Ulster, Connacht and Munster all have to get into that top 8. But there's only 8 teams, and I'm sure Indo Sport South Africa are talking about trying to get at least 3 of the 4 franchises in. Both Scottish teams will have eyes on getting in, and look, Benetton will want to get there, having been squeezed out last year, and they were good last year. They nearly took down Munster in the final game of the season. The Welsh are once again in crisis, but still they have a team or two that are good enough to get into that top 8 mix. So someone's going to have a below par season. So it's there's reasons for optimism across the board. Of course there is. Pre-seasons, that's what pre-season's for. But I do think that it's going to be a challenging year for Irish rugby.
Okay. Connacht finished 13th in the URC last year. It was kind of like a season from hell. 13th in the URC, which was their lowest ever league finish. Obviously there's been different guises of the tournament, but it was their worst ever season. They only won 6 of their 18 league games, which is very, very poor, obviously. They conceded 62 tries. Off the field, Pete Wilkins went on sick leave halfway through the season. There was kind of a feeling that he might be leave at the end of the year, which he ultimately did. Scott Farley's out as well as a defence coach. But then they pull out Stuart Lancaster, which I don't think you could have picked a better maybe person to get people enthused and excited ahead of the new season. I know you were there earlier in the week ahead of their opening game against Benetton. You have the kind of the new stand, which will be opening later in the year, which is, I saw that your photo, I think you put up on Instagram. It looks resplendent. I think it's going to be a brilliant setup when it's finally done. They also have brought Rod Seaman from the Brumbies, kind of like as a senior coach. Billy Miller joined from Harlequins. He was director of rugby there. He's going to fill some sort of similar
GM.
role. Yeah, GM. Kind of somewhat similar, depending on how you dress up the titles. So they've really robustly changed their back room. So, in terms of expectations being realistic, for me, top 8 is very realistic there. And that is a major step forward. I think the one interesting piece, or not interesting, they've only really brought in Sam Gilbert from the Highlanders, who won't be arriving till after the NPC season. He's been playing with Otago there, so that's going to be another few weeks. So he's very much going with the squad he has. Now, we've always seen Connacht playing good rugby. Defensively has been very leaky. So that's an easy fix. Or not easy, but it's an obvious fix. If they can even fix that a little bit, they'll go a long way towards improving. Well, what was your sense of being down there talking to Stuart Lancaster? What's he like now, talking to him, compared to what he would have been like last time you would have seen him? Because obviously in the interim, as excited as everyone is, there was this disastrous period at Racing 92, whereas he went in there as a guy who could finally get these guys to knuckle down, be coached the way the guys at Leinster were coached and reap the rewards, win top 14s and Champions Cups. It didn't materialise at all. It didn't seem to take, which was always kind of a concern, that maybe that kind of coaching wouldn't mesh well with well, not a exclusively French squad, a predominantly French squad, and it kind of, from his public comments, seems to have been the case from his perspective. He didn't think the guys really actually wanted to be coached that hard. What's he like now? What's the Stuart Lancaster Connacht are getting, do you think?
Exact same, certainly public facing as he was at Leinster. In fact, probably even more authoritative because he is the coach. He is no longer is he the senior coach who has to kind of. He never deferred to Leo Cullen because he knew he was massively empowered with Leinster, but it was a shared role and there were responsibilities. Like team selection ultimately comes down to Leo Cullen, whereas now it's his ship to steer. Now, having Billy Miller, a person with Connacht connections, who coached Connacht as an assistant between 2011 and 2013, and married a woman from Galway who we met in his last couple of weeks there, and is coming back. He will take a lot of the kind of stuff that Stuart Lancaster doesn't want to do. He will like to have an input on recruitment, but he doesn't want to spend his whole time talking about contracts. He wants to be on the pitch. Last night he ran a coaching clinic for all the schools and club coaches who were qualified for a certain level in the sport or in the Dexcom Stadium. So he's already started doing all the things that worked for him at Leinster. I think he looks at Racing as a bit of a, you could say it's an anomaly because England didn't work either. He did a very good job at England to a certain point, and then the World Cup came and it went terribly. Racing, I always thought he'd struggle if he didn't have the language nailed, and he didn't. He never really seemed to put a lot of emphasis on arriving there with enough French to get by, and I think he made a rod for his own back by not having that. But also he's gone into the profile of squad that he came into Leinster. Leinster just lost Pro 12 final to Connacht. They were at a low ebb. He came in, he invested in the players. He helped bring up a group of young, hungry, promising future. Some of them were current, but the lads who basically went on to backbone the Irish team for the last 10 years. Connacht is a different profile, but what he will have is a group of players who will hang on his every word because he is bigger than they are. Apart from Bundyaki, really, and maybe Mac Hansen, his profile and what he's done in the game far outweighs what anyone in Connacht has done. And
his reputation in Ireland as well is higher than in any other country by a distance. Say if he had been appointed the Leicester coach, they had a vacancy in the summer, he wouldn't be going in and getting the same level of sponge-like buy-in or enthusiasm as he would in Ireland, because everyone in Ireland has been hearing how great a coach he is from the biggest names in the sport for the last 10 years almost. So to that point, I agree with you.
Yeah, so I think he's gone in there and he He's done. I have a piece running on Saturday where I spoke to a couple of people about him. Spoke to Lancaster himself and Billy Millard in kind of a press conference, but asked a couple of different pieces to try and pull it all together. And Tuesdays are already up and running. These kind of high intensity ball and play sessions that he does on the Tuesday to try and test the players' capacity to make good decisions under pressure, match scenarios. Apparently they've done very little running for running's sake in pre-season. It's all been with a ball in their hand. I know that it's kind of the modern way, but even some of the players were like, we've never had a pre-season like this. The first thing he did when it did Leinster was he put up on screen the previous season's final defeat to Connacht, pulled it apart forensically and said, this is what you did wrong. The first session in this season, he got a load of clips from last season and said, this is where you're going wrong, this is what we're going to fix. Players were like, okay, like he didn't wait to get his feet under the desk. He was straight in going, these are the problems, this is how we solve them. He's got Rod Saib, who's going to take, and I think that's how you pronounce his name, but he's going to take the attack. Sieb or Saib, I'm not sure actually. Yeah. But he's going to take the attack. So Lancaster's going to be mainly focused on defence. The attack was really good at getting into the 22. Their record of actually scoring from within the 22 wasn't great. So that's another area. There's a bit of low-hanging fruit for them to improve on. The only problem is that suggests that they don't have the physical profile to bully their way over the line. And they will have to adapt to the squad that they have because they are a small team compared to some of the bigger teams, like Leinster, but also the South African teams are going to be coming up against. They are pulling from a smaller base. They haven't, as you said, gone out and signed any big hitters. There might be scope for them to do that next year with Millard now forward planning, but last year they got in Gilbert. So they have to be tactically smart in how they do it.
I think Gilbert is a good signing. He's a good goal kicker. Like Connacht's goal kicking has been really, really poor the last few years. Like it's like the amount of conversions they missed. There was one game last year, I think it was in the Challenge Cup, where they scored like 7 tries and missed, I think, 5 or 6 conversions. Their line kicking has been atrocious as well. Like small, easy fixes as well. Now I know line kicking has been something we've been talking about with all the teams, but like I think they're like relatively. Not easy because goal kicking's not easy, but Sam Gilbert, he's a solid full back. He's not a game breaker, but he's a good player, and if he can like kind of steady the goal kicking element of it,
it's not easy, Will, but it's a non-negotiable if you want to be successful in the URC and in the Challenge Cup as Connacht are in. Like you have to have. There are certain things you have to have a good set piece. Like we're talking about Munster, they need to have a better line out. Like they need to fix it. That's an obvious fix for them because you can't do anything without a line out, particularly in Ireland where nearly every attack is built off set piece. And for Connacht, you're absolutely right. With Josh Ioane was able to do great things with ball in hand, but he couldn't do the basics of what's expected of an out half at the level that he's at. And he didn't have a French 9 who could take the pressure off him, or maybe Sam Gilbert coming in at 15. The bits I saw on Monday, I think Jack Carty's probably going to start this weekend, and maybe this could be a renaissance for Jack Carty, who's kind of fallen by the wayside in recent seasons. And maybe Lancaster can tap into what got Jack Carty into the Ireland jersey in the 2019 World Cup. And he's not old by any means. He's experienced. He's been through it all, and he's had a hard couple of years. Carty's got a wonderful short kicking game, and is probably their best goal kicker, even though he has some wobbly moments over the years as well. It is tougher in Connacht, but this time of year it's going to be, there's no excuses. So look, he has to find solutions from what he's got from within his own squad. Even Gilbert isn't going to arrive till the NPC is finished. So he is dealing with the same deck of cards that Pete Wilkins was dealing with at the start of the season. And the start of the season, they went down to Thomond Park and played their part in an absolute epic on the opening night and lost, which was kind of the story of the first half of their season. Then we had this curious situation where Wilkins went on sick leave, then was then left the club. Collie Tucker took over, and it just seemed like a malaise set in. And from people down there have told me that the atmosphere, they've never seen it as low as it was towards the end of last season. So there's definitely a case of a big figure. So where will they get their upside? How much can a coach do to get an uplift from the same group of players? It's going to be a massive test of Lancaster's.
But I think it's a good squad. I do. Like say, it's not a squad that I think can win the URC. Like you said earlier to me, do you think there might be dark horses to push for that? I don't see that. I see them, though, definitely as a young squad with lots of talent that a coach like Lancaster, who has a track record of producing young players and building them up and getting them to the next level, I think is perfect for it.
I think it's a top 8. It's potentially, with the mix that they have, and if things go right for them injury-wise, they can get into the top 8. And why I think they're dark horses is if you get them into the top 8 at that time of year where pitch is hardening, they are dangerous. Even the last time they managed to get there under Andy Friend, they beat Ulster away in a quarter-final and then went and gave a really good account of themselves against the Stormers. If you have Bundy Aki fit, if you have Mac Hansen, the problem they have, I think, is even though they have now got an Ireland tight head prop in Jack Ainger to back up their Lions tight head prop in Finlay Bealham, who is pushed. Him and Bundyaki are pushing on. This may be Bundyaki's final season. He hinted at that after the Lions. They have now got Darragh Murray has played for Ireland, so that's a massive asset for them to have in their second row. I still think they look a little bit light in their tight five, and when you want to win championships and when you come up against Leinster, full strength.
They don't need to be. I think that's like pushing for the stars. They don't need to reach for the stars.
But that's not my. I'm just saying that they could be dark horses. My expectation of them is top
if they
8.
finish 8th this year, that's a good year.
And a good rattle at the Challenge Cup, because that's something that I talked to a Connacht. I've mentioned this.
Well, they did it. They tried it last year. To be fair, they were 21-5 up against Racing after 20 minutes. And Racing had a man sent off, and they ended up losing. But
that was kind of
symptomatic.
The same word. But it was basically that was their season in a nutshell, wasn't it? It was high scoring, entertaining, but also careless.
Yeah,
and they're not going to be careless. You would imagine Lancaster won't tolerate carelessness, and he will work hard on developing young leaders, getting the players who've been capped, because they have, I think it's 5 players got capped during the summer. Hugh Gavin is a player of huge promise who can kick on this year. Shane Bolton's an excellent player. Finn Tracy wasn't capped, but he is a player of real promise on the wing.
Matthew Devine and Ben Murphy, 2 very good ones. And Caelan Blade.
And Caelan Blade, again, he was up for media on Monday, so he'll probably start, because Lancaster might be going with an experienced, homegrown, senior leadership from the kind of from the region. And then he'll be able to, I want to see Devine. The RFU blocked Matthew Devine signing for La Rochelle for this season. Why? You must have a plan. If you're going to stop this guy going and improving in France under Ronan O'Gara, you've got to have a plan for this guy to play rugby, because he's too good. And Ben Murphy's a very good player as well. Now, he has to earn his place, but Devine has been a real frustration. He's been a player of huge promise that a lot of people want to see kick on, but he hasn't got the reps at Connacht. So
it's funny that you have Blade, Murphy, and Devine all in Connacht. It's like 3-9. It's like that makes no sense.
Yeah, well, that's
I would say Munster and Ulster only have 1-9.
Yeah, that's the limitations of the Irish system. Leinster are hot-housing players left, right, and centre. Now they need them. Now they're in South Africa, but you're not seeing that kind of proliferation of okay, we've got 3-10s here, let's move. David Humphreys can't move lads without them wanting to move, and coaches are always going to hoard
Richie
players.
Murphy texted his son, and they're not even texting, talk to his son, was like, maybe join your brother.
You never know, that might happen in the future.
And you're looking at their fixtures: Benetton home, Scarlets home, Cardiff away, Bulls home minus Springboks. They don't have huge amounts. They kind of have. The Bulls are a strange team. They're very good in the league, but they don't actually have that many international players. But the Benetton one, I actually think is a little tricky when you're looking at the Benetton team.
They're all tricky games.
And looking through the squad for Benetton, they seem to have signed 4 Queensland Reds on short-term loans. John Bryan in back row and Josh Tucker centre are probably the 2 more ones that people might be familiar.
I think they have a deal with the Queensland Reds where they're going to they're basically an experience sharing, so Italian players will go to Super Rugby.
Fascinating, because not that these guys are world beaters, but they're solid. And John Bryan played in their most recent preseason friendly game where they hammered a weakened Harlequins team. So that's not a gimme, but my point is 4 winnable games to start the season, and the momentum could be huge.
They're winnable games. They're also very losable games. Connacht need to perform. None of it. I think Leinster can mix and match and get through the season and still probably top the table. And in fairness, when they rotate, they generally still play well. Connacht, the thing Lancaster and Macmillan is the same, because Munster are capable of an off day, and Ulster very much, who finished below Connacht, are very capable of an off day. Lancaster needs to get a consistency of performance within games and also across games in terms of from one game to another. The stand looks magnificent. They're going to be playing in front of it empty for the first 6 or 7 rounds.
It's Leinster in January, is that the idea?
Yeah, January 24th.
That'll be class.
It will be class, but there's a lot of, at the moment they're playing, they've got a special derogation for half time to be longer, because the distance from the pitch to the dressing room is, they have to go around the building site to get into it. They're changing in their HBC. So there is, the stadium is incredibly exciting. There's 880 seats for sponsors. There's the capacity for 4,000 season ticket holders to sit in that stand. They have indoor bars, which will bring in more money because people won't be legging it into town because the weather is crap and they're in a tent being blown away. There is capacity. There's a cafe. There's that area for the premium area is basically going to be open 7 days a week for functions. It's got the biggest ballroom in the west of Ireland. It has a capacity to generate income for the club for the long term, but it's not ready yet. I got a full tour of it. It's very impressive. It's a little bit open to the elements. I think when the wind whips in, it's going to be it could be a tough place to watch a game. And dwarfs the rest of the stadium. Looks very shabby in comparison, but and I'm not sure there's capacity to back it up with, unless they get rid of the Greyhound track. But like, it's overlooking houses and stuff, so it's going to be it's a stand. It's a very, very impressive stand. But the other three sides of the ground are like a little bit of a wasteland in comparison. But for the moment, it's going to be less than 4,000 capacity. So not the most inspiring or intimidating home venue for them to play in. So they've got to find the motivation themselves, and they've got to generate momentum into their season. They can't rely on Lancaster to do it. So the players have to go out, take what he's given them, and I think he will give them a really good plan and improve players, and get them really on the same page. And if they go out and they win that game on Saturday, then they're rolling.
Yeah.
But then, and he said it himself, we didn't win our first game at Leinster. When he first went into Leinster, he lost his first game. But at Leinster, he did have a team full of internationals. This is a different profile. And it's a team that we know can get down on themselves and lose confidence winning a season. They didn't win an Inter-Pro last year. They need to start winning games against their rivals. Whatever about picking off Leinster, and the 24th of January will be a great time to do it on the opening of the stadium. They've got to be better against Munster. They've got to be better against Ulster. They've got to pick up wins in those games, because they're going for those top 8 spaces. They're competing with those teams for oxygen. So they have, like, I want Keane Prendergast to kick on and have a really good season and get himself into the Ireland mix. Farrell wants to see players from the provinces push on. David Humphreys, the IRFU performance director, has said bridging the gap between Leinster and the other 3 provinces is the primary target of the IRFU on the men's side of the house this season. He's put coaches in place in the 2 provinces that needed coaches last season to do that. And Lancaster is there, and we know that he's a really good coach with a proven track record. Now the players have to buy into it, make the necessary improvements, and hopefully then Ireland will be the beneficiaries at the end of it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the team I'm most intrigued to see how they go. And Benetton is, I think, at 8 o'clock on Saturday, half 7 maybe.
It's the late one on Saturday.
Trivia question: do you know who his first Leinster game was against?
I was probably there, but I can't remember.
Glasgow away. It was the second game of the season that year. He came in after week 1. It was. I remember getting up in the morning and just checking my phone and being like, Stuart Lancaster to Leinster. I don't think I've ever been as surprised with any kind of appointment, because to that point his career had been the England head coach when he was a director of rugby very much.
Yeah,
I kind of didn't.
I think Stuart Lancaster to Connacht is probably the second on that list. Maybe Jordy Barrett signing for Leinster, then Rico. Like, the Leinster have pulled a few over us over the years, but it was. I remember being stunned by it at the time and thinking that Leo Cullen had almost appointed a threat, but it worked so well. Yeah. It ran its course though, and I think in a new dressing room with a whole bunch of new players, I think there's capacity for him to go to a couple of Leinster players who maybe are a bit disenfranchised with the current era and get them in next season.
Yeah,
like this could be magic for Connacht, but it might take a little while because it is the same squad, and that, like, confidence has to be built. Like, they weren't confident at the end of last season. He can only do so much. They got to go out and win some games to get to that level now. I
remember Warren Gatland gave, I thought, a very prescient assessment of the kind of the character traits of each country in the Lions squad, what they're good at. And I think Irish players in particular would be the most receptive for Stuart Lancaster's style of coaching.
Yes, agreed.
So I think hopefully it pays dividend. Ulster then as well. So they finished one place below Connacht last year, 14th. They only won 5 of their 18 games. They had 1 draw as well. They lost at home to Zebre in a really kind of miserable, wet, I think was it a Sunday evening? I feel like I was at home, I think, on a Sunday watching that and being like, how has it gotten this bad? They lost their last 5 games. They conceded 72 tries in the league. Mark Sexton has joined from Connacht as the attack coach. Willie Falloon is now the permanent defence coach, kind of kind of gaining that under-20s coaching ticket from a few years ago that was very successful. Ulster have made the 2 eye-catching signings outside of Rico Ioane, like Joanno Augustus, who people will remember played really well for Northampton in that semi-final win at the Aviva Stadium for Northampton over Leinster. Then Angus Bell, who's been brilliant for Australia, albeit I still think Joe Schmidt is keeping the reins on too tight on Angus Bell. I want to see him in from the start. He's been really explosive for Ulster. He's not coming until after the November internationals, but we do have one of our first team news. So Joanno Augustus will be on the bench for Ulster. They play the Dragons tomorrow night. Jacob Stockdale starts on the wing. Good to see, because I think he injured his shoulder in the summer tour, so there was worry that might bleed into the season. It hasn't. You know, a lot of big names there: Ian Henderson, Cormac Azashuku, Nick Timoney, Stuart McCluskey. Like this is about as strong a team as they can put out. Minus, I suppose, those Augustus starting and Bell later on in the year. This is their big winnable game to start the year, because after this it's Edinburgh away, Bulls home, then to South Africa for Sharks and Lions. So they need to win with a bonus point here and just get a little bit of good vibes going, because, you know, it could be another tough season for them potentially, but at least they're starting the season with a fit team, which hasn't always been the case. Like last year they had loads of injuries and they very rarely got their best team on the pitch.
Yeah, they are. They're the one you'd worry the most about. I think Richie Murphy, I think, is under pressure this season to improve things and get results. Not least because Munster and Connacht have gone abroad and got big name coaches to come in, and David Humphreys has kind of played a huge role in going and getting them. Now, Richie Murphy has earned the right to get the next. When the job came up, he had earned it through the 20s, and I think it was the right decision for him to take that. If he wanted to take the next step in his career, he had done enough with the under 20s to do that. But he's in the URC now, having gone from having had no connection to Ulster previously, he's now gone up to coach a province where they've been starved of success. They under Dan McFarlane they had good results, but it kind of had tailed off towards the end, and now they've had off-field challenges. They've had to cut their budget massively. They've let a lot of experience go. Some players that were let go at the end of last season to retire probably would have kept going if they'd given them, say, I don't know, I can't speak for Alan O'Connor, and even, could they have made an offer to John Cooney? These players all left. So a huge contingent of senior players are gone out the door, and he's trying to make the improvements with a quite a young squad. And he, having backed the young players that he has been backing, he now needs them to kind of repay his faith. But it's hard because the URC is a tough competition, and there are very few games like the one they have this weekend against the Dragons to kind of pick off. There's not, if you're an Irish province, you play against the other Irish provinces more than anyone else. It's a challenge that, so like the Cardiff only have to play Leinster once, Ulster play Leinster twice. That's a real difficulty if you're a struggling Irish province trying to get results. You only play Zebre once. Whereas Benetton and the two Scottish teams get to play Zebra twice. So that's a little quirk of the format that we have that works works against an Irish coach trying to build cohesion, get enough wins on the board. So when you look at the 23 they've put out on Friday night, there's huge strength in certain areas. I think Augustus will have a huge impact. I'm surprised he's not starting, to be honest, because I think he's the profile of player that every Irish team needs, a big ball carrying number 8 to get them over the gain line, to make hard carries, make hard yards. Obviously, we don't know what his fitness is like at the stage of pre-season, so that's fair enough. But I think he will be one of those players that they rely on.
He was
heavily.
Unbelievable against Leinster, and it's easy to remember or forget. He didn't play the Champions Cup final. Like, he picked up a knock and wasn't fit to play against Bordeaux. Like, and that was a game that was really close. Like, he would have made a massive impact that day as well.
Ian Henderson needs to be fit for the next season. Like, Ian Henderson remains, I think, an important player in the Irish picture if he can stay fit. He's of an age profile where he should, as a second row, have a couple more years left. He's a senior player, a leader, a provincial captain.
Same age as Tyke Byrne.
Tyke Furlong, Robbie Henshaw, the kind of senior men. Now that Peter O'Mahony's retired, that kind of 2014-20s group that they were part of, they're now the senior men in the Irish dressing room. And as recently as the 2023 World Cup, Henderson started a World Cup quarter-final for Ireland. So that's it. I think it's too soon to write off Ian Henderson, but he's had so many injuries and his form probably has dropped off as a result. He's been written off a little bit. He didn't play well. Didn't he come off the bench in the New Zealand game at the start of November last year and didn't go well for him? And he's kind of played, but then he got injured again, and he's just had that bad run at Ulster. Whatever about Ireland, at Ulster he is pivotal. He, the fact that he's starting their first game of the season, Stockdale, like a player who I think is good enough to get himself back into the Ireland mix, especially as James Lowe comes back off a poor enough Lions tour and is getting older.
33.
Stockdale has huge upside. Zach Ward on the other wing, really exciting, has had a season of senior rugby now under his belt, needs to nail his defence in this high ball game, but you get the ball in that guy's hand, he'll cause damage.
Full strength backline, like Lowry, Ward, Hume, McCluskey, Stockdale, Jack Murphy,
and it's exciting. It's an exciting backline, but it's very callow. 9, you got Doku. They love up there, and it has been consistently backed by coaches up there, but can't get a look in for Ireland. Maybe it's just because he's not the kind of style of 9 they want to play with. But also Jack Murphy, who is only in his second season as a pro, having been promoted, because of a lack of depth and also the trust that his dad has in him. Up front, they're good enough to beat the Dragons, but can that pack dominate against the Leinster without kind of Bell before he comes in, or say a couple of games against South Africans coming up? Are they going to struggle physically? Well, you need to see the likes of Callum Reid, these guys step up. Tom O'Toole is a player who needs to kick on this year. He's got a number of Ireland caps. He's beaten the All Blacks, or he certainly played against the All Blacks a couple of times. But it's always been off the bench. He's never been able to take that next step. And Ireland have invested heavily in him. Stuart Wilson is a massively exciting tight head prop. Who went on tour with Ireland but didn't get any minutes, but is still a player who's being mapped. So there are players there like Rob Herring, another experience, but they have good players. But whether they have the depth across a season to compete on, like the fact that they're not in the Champions Cup is a disaster from a season tickets point of view, but it's good in terms of them able to rest players across Christmas and maybe target the Interpros, in January and December, and maybe get to the knockouts and then target it. They should be good enough to do that. But I would have my doubts about them across a season, being able to pick off enough wins. And the way it went last year, where they lost the last 6-7 games of the season, they really fell off.
Lost the last 5.
Yeah, so where do they find the momentum now? It's a big challenge for Richie Murphy, who I rate as a coach. But this is the first really big senior head coaching job he has. It's an important job for him, because the next, if it doesn't go well, what comes next for him?
I agree with you on Richie Murphy's appointment. I think it's a good thing. Like, if the Ireland under-20s coach who wins back-to-back Grand Slams can't get a look in, there's something wrong with the pathways for coaches. There's not like, Noel McNamara won a Grand Slam and has obviously went abroad and built his career and is now doing really well with Bordeaux, and Richie Murphy got the chance with Ulster. But at the same time, like, it's obvious that like all the other 3 provinces have an eye-catching head coach. Obviously, Neen Aber, not the head coach, but senior coach or what have you. So if it doesn't go well, it's natural for us as supporters to be like, we also want to have a big coach, marquee name. Like, I think wasn't Ian Foster linked with the job briefly? I don't know if there was ever anything to it, but his name was bandied about, I think, after McFarland, and that felt very far-fetched then. But now, in a time where maybe budgets are being cut back on the playing side, if you can afford one kind of marquee budget kind of splash out to get a big coach, it is appetizing, because it kind of gets the fan base off your back, or can buy some time to make a big splash. So he will need to have a good season, I think, to solidify himself. And on the playing side, there's a name I circle on the team sheet who I really want to see a big season from is Cormac Izachukwu, who had a breakout, but hasn't yet really kind of had this consistent level of impact. I want to see him across a campaign be one of the key men for Ulster. He's so dynamic. He's a rangy number 6 at a time where we seem to be producing a lot of rangy number 6s, which is great because they're a great physical profile. I think that will bode well at international level. But I do want to see him have a really impactful outing across the season. Like, as I said, the first 5 matches, like after the Dragons at home, Edinburgh away, Bulls home, Sharks and Lions away. Like, that's tough. Like, you'll need a player like that, especially in South Africa, I think.
Well, like, we are 6 weeks out from Chicago. Ireland play New Zealand. Peter O'Mahony's retired. The last time Ireland played a Six Nations match, Peter O'Mahony started at blindside. There is an opening there. Ryan Baird, I would say, is ahead. Ty Byrne just played there for the Lions, so he could go in there. But if you're Cormac Izachukwu or Thomas Ahern down in Munster, you've got to be looking at Chicago and going, hang on, there's a jersey there for me to go and win. And Izachukwu he's been in loads of training camps. He knows the system now. He's got to go with Ireland. Now is the time where he needs to go to the next level, because towards the end of last season, and Baird has done this, flirted with the next level a couple of times, and
started against England
and lost his place then. But I think that he is probably ahead in that race. Byrne could end up there, but from an Ulster point of view, like they're not getting enough players into the Ireland setup.
No,
they've no lines. I think I'm right in saying they've no lines, and they're not getting enough players. Like, the recent years. This era is the first time in the history of Irish rugby we've had 20 match day squads with no Ulster players in it. It's a huge low point for Ulster rugby.
No one there is in the Ireland 23 realistically.
Stockdale can get there. Izachukwu can get there, but they've got to really perform. McCluskey obviously is right in the mix in that, and in the most competitive area of the squad, but he's coming towards the end of his career. He's had a good, whenever Ireland have called on him, he's been very good. Herring has had a very good Irish career. Henderson can get back in that mix. Someone like Harry Sheridan, the second row, I think is an excellent player who just needs to stay fit and get a consistent run. I like Dave McCann, the back row. McNabney starts the season injured. He's a player I think who can get there if they can get once they get him back after his ACL, which he did before the tour. Tom O'Toole has been in and around the Irish mix, but they're all players who need to now take ownership of Ulster first, get Ulster firing, win games, dominate games, perform well before they can start worrying about Ireland. And up until now, they're not giving Andy Farrell enough headaches and enough reason to pick them because they're not performing for their provinces.
To that point, like the Lions will only play max one game before Chicago, you presume. The Leinster-Munster game is the one circled for, like, and if guys have niggles coming back from that, say, like, they won't play at all until Chicago. So, like, there is an opportunity now.
Joe McCarthy and Caelan Doris, no guarantee they'll be back. So there are Ireland openings
not
there.
that, like, great performances in some of these games would necessarily let you leapfrog a Lion, but you would get, as you say, the headache. You want to create the conundrum because November against Chicago for week 1, it's a 4-match series. Like Springboks are the last game. Like there's a lot of rugby to be played between the start and the end. So the team that plays against Chicago will be quite undercooked. So there's opportunities.
There's an argument as well that if someone's in form and in rhythm and has played 4 games going into Chicago, he should get the nod ahead of someone who's only played 1 game, even if he is a Lion.
That's not Andy Farrell.
That's not Andy Farrell's way. But if someone's really shooting the lights out, scoring tries, confident, comes into training and nails training and just doesn't look, and the player they're training against looks a little bit still just easing themselves into the season. The big lesson from last year, surely, is that Ireland were undercooked in our opening game. So that's the way these players have to frame it. Even if they know it's unlikely, they've got to give themselves a chance because, as you say, it's going to be a big squad. We are at a pivot. I wrote about it last Sunday. We're at a pivotal point in the World Cup cycle as we start. I think we're now at the point where we switch from 23 to 27. A lot, the senior, the last of the retirees, maybe other than Aki, who may go next summer, have gone. We're now looking at building a squad towards that tournament. Even Tyke Furlong said it in here. He said, or in one of the other studios, he said this is when the real business starts in terms of building towards a World Cup. So if you want to go to the World Cup in 2027, if you're an Ulster player, a Connacht player, a Munster player, or a Leinster fringe player, if you're in Leinster, you need to knock out an international out of your position, which is really difficult. But if you're in the other provinces, you just got to keep playing well. And when you get Leinster, you got to beat Leinster and you got to play well against Leinster. That's how you get Andy Farrell's attention.
The World Cup starts here. Ruaidhri O'Connor said it first. Speaking of Leinster, I know they're playing tomorrow evening, so we won't dwell on it too much, but I just want to spin through the team and just what we can kind of extrapolate from it. It was named to that afternoon. Back 3, Jimmy O'Brien at 15. He gets the first crack at the fullback sweepstakes ahead of that game against the All Blacks. Tommy O'Brien and Jordan Lammer on the wings. Lots of pace in that back 3. Robbie Henshaw at 13. Frawley at 12. Sam Prendergast and Luke McGrath halfback, Jack Boyle, Gus McCarthy and Slimani in the front row, Diarmuid Mangan and Brian Deeney in the second row, Baird, Penny and James Culhane in the back row, John McKee, Paddy McCarthy, Andrew Sparrow, Max Deegan, Will Connors, Fintan Gunn, Harry Byrne and Hugh Cooney on the bench. Like a few things jump out to me. I was wondering if the temptation of having Baird in a second row might be too much for Leo Cullen in South Africa, and with like kind of Deegan and Connors there in the back row as well on the bench to maybe have a more beefier pack. But he opted to give Mangan and Deeney the second row berths, the young guys, and Baird, which I think is a good thing to build on his performances at the end of the season when he was, I think, a lot more of the. I think the way he played at 6 at the end of last season is a lot more translatable to international level than the eye-catching stuff he does, which can be quite, I suppose, exciting to watch, but doesn't often result in an end product. And at international level, I don't think is as easy to do. A few other things. Yeah, Jordan Lammer, really forgotten man. I feel like I haven't seen him play in so long. Great to see him back fit. Tommy O'Brien getting a chance to build on his good summer. Jimmy O'Brien, as I mentioned, at full back. And then Sam Prendergast obviously getting the start out half. It's always interesting to see him play. Every game is its own storyline there. Like, what are you kind of taking away from this team selection? Anything?
Well, it's a very inexperienced pack. If Leinster helpfully put the caps in brackets, and they've got 5 Centurions in their back line, and no one in their pack has over 100 caps for Leinster. So still was it 3 internationals in that pack. 4 internationals in their pack, so it's not as if it's completely callow. But I agree with you. Like, there must have been a temptation to put Baird into the second row just to get a bit of experience and ballast there. Although he does a lot of the stuff, from 6. And Deeney looked. I was down at their open session in Greystones, and Deeney looks like he's put on some size. Mangan is a player who's very highly rated.
Was training with Ireland, wasn't he?
He trained with Ireland during the Six Nations, but didn't go on the summer tour. But he's a player of real promise. I think they really like his attitude. The headline, like, really what this is about is Leinster's squad getting enough points out of South Africa to set them up for the season, because it's, their Lions won't feature, and they will have a couple of bodies. I think they'll probably have Osborne and Clarkson next week, so there's more bodies to come back into it. They have a couple of big injuries in Doris and McCarthy and Hugo Keenan, so there is opportunity for players to kind of impress. And last year, their trip to South Africa was really successful because they nearly beat the Bulls, and then they picked off the Sharks with a really kind of understrength team. So I wouldn't write this team off at all. And if they go and they beat the Stormers,
They're
who
big
are missing
favourites.
are they?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
It's the Stormers. If you look at the Stormers team, like it's actually a good time, as you say, to be in South Africa, minus their Springboks. Say like Kobus Reinek, who's joined them, obviously is playing with the Springboks. Sasha Feinberg and Gamazulu, who will be starting, is playing with the Springboks. Again, the Sharks are the real Springbok laden team. They're probably the most affected team, but it's not a bad time to be going there.
No, but it's still tough away from home without so many of your players and with a pack with that little experience. But I still would give them a really good shot, and if they can pick up 4 or 5 points in Cape Town, it just sets them up lovely, because all of the rivals will be looking at the start of the season as a chance to. They know that, like Jake White talked about it before he was removed as Bulls coach, but in and around that final he talked about how difficult it is if you let Leinster top the table. Then you have to go. They stay in Dublin for the quarterfinal, semi-final, final, and it's so difficult, especially for the South Africans, to take them out. So the Bulls in particular, under what's his name, their new coach,
Ruan Ackerman.
Johan Ackerman.
Ruan is his son.
Ruan's his son. Ackerman will be looking at trying to get ahead of Leinster and trying to get a final in Pretoria, because it's obvious, but this is a time where Leinster.
It's no exaggeration. Like if Leinster are able to win it against the Stormers and get like a bonus point against the Bulls, say, that they're halfway to topping the table with as strong a squad as they have. Like the South African games traditionally are the ones where they drop their points across the season.
Yeah.
Last year they lost 2 games, one to the Bulls and they lost to the Scarlets as well when they had the top table pretty much sewn up. So just because they're such a strong squad, some of the away games, I think they've won 5 in a row at Thomond Park. Like, they like none of the away games really hold much fear for their squad. South Africa is probably one of them.
Like they may miss Ross Byrne and that, like in terms of having an unbelievably reliable.
Playing tonight for Gloucester, actually. If anyone wants some Thursday night rugby, they're playing
Sale. I have an interview
Sale.
with him that I spoke to him on Tuesday, and it'll be going out next week. But he was a big player for Leinster when everyone was away, because when he wasn't getting in the Ireland setup, he was such a reliable operator, kicked his goals. Interesting to see how Harry goes this year. Like the 10 situation, with Ross gone, and obviously Sexton's now 2 years out of it. You got Prendergast there, who has his
guy.
Oh, which great. He has his attributes, but he has his flaws as well. Byrne I thought he had a really good loan spell in Bristol.
Yes, he did. He looked sharp.
He's refused to go elsewhere. He said, "I want to be the Leinster 10," so he has to prove himself.
You chatted to him, didn't you, at the end of last season? Yeah. He was very bullish, I think, about coming back and being a force. And like, what I think he should be. Like, I was saying this to lads during the week that, like, I think this is a big game for Sam Prendergast. Like, as in to start the season with a good game and a win would go a long way to kind of just solidifying his position at Leinster.
Certainly at Leinster, yeah.
And kind of like quietening anyone who's criticising him.
But his position at Leinster is so influenced by his position with Ireland. So if Andy Farrell still thinks he's the man, like Leo Cullen has said that November changed the picture at Leinster, which is part of the reason I'd say that Ross Byrne left.
So is it like if Andy Farrell drops Sam Prendergast, Leo Cullen's like, phew, no, I can do it?
I wouldn't say he's saying few, because I think it leaves him in a pickle, because he's gone with Prendergast and Byrne is there, but we know that Harry, when he's had his opportunities, hasn't quite taken them. I still think, like, he's only 26, he's learned a lot, he's got a bit of experience now. They're picked Frawley at 12, so that's he's still going to get buffered around the back line, but there's still a player there who dropped a goal to beat South Africa in the last minute of a test match in South Africa. So there are 3 really good players there, but they all have something to prove.
What's funny about Frawley is I've seen a lot of people say, why doesn't he go to Connacht? Stuart Lancaster's there, and I'm kind of like, Lancaster didn't rate him at all. Like, Lancaster never picked him. He actually got much less game time with Lancaster as a key man than he has in the subsequent years. So
yeah, but he's accumulated a lot more experience now, and I don't know if he's one that would go, but I think Leinster will be very very wary of Lancaster coming in to players who maybe say Jimmy O'Brien. I'm just plucking his name out, but like, he thrived under Lancaster, and he hasn't really got as much of a look in under Jacques Nienaber. And it was like when talking to Ross Byrne again, the piece will be out next week. Like, he didn't sound like he enjoyed the last couple of years of Leinster and the way Leinster played. So how many more players in Leinster are a little bit disenfranchised with the way they're playing? And can Lancaster, who I'm sure will hear about that in the grapevine, pick a few of them off and bring them west? I think Leinster would be Leinster were not happy when Lancaster got the Connacht job, because they think they've already lost 3 academy players or potential academy players to Connacht, because Connacht are pushing hard to try and bring young players west. And I think some senior men might be looking at it as a potential avenue next year if they're not getting a look in this season. But again, I think that's good for Irish rugby. It might not be good for Leinster.
No, I think it's great. I could actually see Jimmy O'Brien for some reason in the Connacht jersey. In my mind's eye, I can just see him like tearing it up there. Okay, we'll wrap up with some predictions. We can keep this short. I just thought it'd be fun to get your thoughts on some of the big questions before we wrap up. The URC winner will be
Leinster.
The Champions Cup winner will be
Leinster.
Munster's.
If they win the Champions Cup, then come back to me on the URC, because I'm not sure they'll be able to get themselves together for.
Yeah, I think
I think they're the favorite. Like, I think they're the best team in both competitions. So I think I will go with them on that basis.
I don't think
I'm not sure they'll pick up. I think they're right up there alongside Bordeaux and
Dupont back, Toulouse, Maybe
Bath will have a say this year. Toulon will have a say. La Rochelle look to be rejuvenated with their new signings. So it won't be easy, and there'll be a couple of difficult days along the way. But
I'm intrigued. Like, they've added Henry Arundel and Santiago Carreras to a team that was already like pretty good. Now Leinster gave him a fairly good trimming last year, albeit bad, caused some problems in the first half. But so that'll be interesting. Munster's season will end X. Like, how do you?
Munster should be going for top 4. Probably Champions Cup. Champions Cup pool is hard for them, but it's kind of hard not to get out of the pool. But they should pick off just about enough points. But they got to go to Toulon.
Getting Bath and Toulon is there. I was hoping Bath
at home.
I was hoping Bath would be the Porky Queeve game.
Yeah, like Cast at home that's not a.
That's a 5-pointer.
That's Cast. You never know. But you never know.
The Espoirs.
Cast, like Munster haven't found Cast straightforward home or away the last couple of years. And Gloucester
Cast winning Saracens last year was like their first away Champions Cup win in like 10 years.
Yeah, you're right. I just know that those have been difficult games over the years. They'll probably get enough, probably get to a quarter final. But if they don't get home advantage in the knockouts, they'll struggle to get anywhere in Europe. But if he gets top 4 in a quarter final, that's a good season. And I think they're capable of it. But I have my doubts over the I think they have a lovely base of players in their squad, but I think they lack a bit of star power, and I'd be worried about the leadership vacuum that Peter O'Mahony leaves behind.
Interesting. Tyke Byrne is the captain upcoming season, as he was last year, was confirmed during the week. Ulster season will end
outside the top 8. I think they can have a good run in the Challenge Cup if they can keep everyone fit, especially with Angus Bell on board, and maybe that's a route back into the Champions Cup. But it's a tough one. It's not easy to do. I just don't think they have the squad depth. And it's a big leap to go from 14th into that top 8. It's going to be competitive.
I think they might be able to sneak in potentially.
Do you think all 4 get there?
Yeah. I think Leinster, Munster, Connacht do. Ulster are on the bubble. Glasgow get in. Bulls and Sharks get in. The Stormers I'm a little curious about, just because I don't like looking at the team sheet today. I could see them losing today. I don't have their second fixture at home to hand.
Second half of the season plays into South Africans' hands though. Like, they play their derbies during the Six Nations. Yeah. They get a lot of home games in the second half of the season, so they often look like they're struggling first half, but they get there in the end. Like, I think the 3 big South African teams generally are able to get in, or are certainly strong enough to get in. But Dobson's been under pressure there the last couple of years, so it's not going to be straightforward. They'd be in the mix for that top 8. Yeah. Benetton could be better this year.
Yeah, I see like Ulster, Benetton, Edinburgh, Stormers scrapping. I don't see any of the Welsh teams getting top 8, and I think.
But Scarlets got in last year, so there is potential for one of the Welsh teams to put it together. Like, Cardiff looked like they were going well in pre-season, and then their coach got picked up by the WRU.
That's completely.
It's a bit of a I don't think it's good. I don't know. Online people might take the Mickey out of the Welsh, but I think it's really bad for the competition that the Welsh regions are. Two of them are under stress, and it's chaos. Like, how do you focus on a season when your club? I mean, I saw there was a headline today. Jack Morgan is saying that if the Ospreys get put out of business, he'll leave Wales. Like, that's the Wales captain. They're one lion. Well, Tomas Williams is the other lion, until he got injured. So,
what kind of scenario is it where the national team is taking the head coach of Cardiff 5 days before the season? Like, how is that being done? Steve Tandy was announced in July as the head coach. If he was going to take him, it should have been done then. I think it's just a shocking. I don't know who to blame or who to point the finger at, but that cannot be allowed to happen. Matt Shared is entitled to go to be the assistant coach of Wales. He filled in the Six Nations. He brought them a bit of respectability against Ireland. He took them in the summer. He ended the long losing streak. He's entitled to take a new job if he wants to, but walking out on a team 5 days before the season, I just think is wrong.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that, but I also think it's just not it's not joined up, but it's not aligned, and it means that we're going into this first round of games. Like, Scarlets Munster's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, and but Munster should be winning away in Scarlets. Like, that shouldn't be maybe it won't be a foregone conclusion, and maybe Scarlets will be better than I'm expecting. But Ulster Dragons, you're kind of going, that's one for Ulster. That should be 5 points to Ulster. You're not. Whereas the games against the South Africans and even Benetton coming to Connacht, you're looking at that going, if not 50-50. I think those are challenges for those teams.
Connacht season ends
Top eight, maybe between 5th and 8th, I think, which is good. And I think as I said, I think they're dangerous. You get to that time of year, no matter where they go, they can pick off anyone apart from maybe Leinster or the Bulls in a knockout game. And I think they can have a real rattle at the Challenge Cup if they can keep their bodies fit.
Yeah. Ireland win how many games in November? They play New Zealand, Chicago, Japan, Australia, South Africa. How many games do they win?
Win the home games, lose Chicago.
I think they win 2 out of 4.
Okay.
Losing Chicago, losing
South Africa.
Yeah. I'm not bullish on Ireland. To be fair, I want to revisit this. Reserve the right to revisit.
Like November last year, they won they obviously lost to New Zealand and won the rest of the games, but they were so poor.
I don't even rate New Zealand that highly. It's just I'm just a little curious about where
they're in season. They've got gym. They've got form. It's going to be very difficult for them to pull together a performance on the basis of 180 minutes, not even 80 minutes for the players in that game. They are going to Chicago. They play basically Leinster, Munster, and the other games are on that weekend. There's a URC round, but Ireland will go to Chicago on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. They're doing a full 10-day prep in America to get ready for it. And then so that they will have a lot of prep time on pitch with Andy Farrell to kind of get them back into Ireland mode. But I mean, the last time we saw Ireland, they weren't playing that, like apart from the summer tour, which obviously was missing all the players. The Six Nations didn't end that impressively. There's a lot of work to be done, I think, for Andy Farrell and this Ireland team. And you're right, like South Africa is a really dangerous game. I just think, they seem to match up quite well against South Africa. It'll be at the end of their season. Australia will be tough as well. It'll be, a small bit of a Lions rematch, but I can't see them losing 3.
The funny thing is, Rassie Rasmus has won 2 World Cups, a Lions Test Series, a Rugby Championship. He's won tests away to New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, England, France, Scotland, Wales. The only thing he doesn't have on his CV is a test win in Ireland. Only thing missing.
And you're tipping him to do it this time.
We'll see. It's going to be an exciting couple of weeks, starting with tomorrow, Leinster and Ulster in action. Rud, I know you have to talk to Clayton McMillan in a couple of minutes, so we got you just in time. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Will.